On this night that President Calderon of Mexico is in Washington, somewhere a kid from Texas is watching the world from the shadows. How did a Texas high school star become one of the most wanted men in the hemisphere?
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Today, we're going to talk about Barbie, Valdez-Villareal, one of the most dangerous cartel members probably to ever set foot on land. Born in Texas, goes to Mexico, starts putting in that work, goes all the way to the top. But we're going to talk about him for a reason, because he's all over the news. People have hit me up. People have sent me the story. You know, you got CNN, Fox News, other news outlets, Smart News. Everybody's talking about he's disappeared from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, website. Where is he? Where could he possibly be? He's released. He's getting out. He's walking among people. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Some people have speculated that they had to move him from USP Coleman 2 because he was in danger. I spent 18 years of my life in federal prison, became a jailhouse lawyer, and I know a little bit about the system, right? So I'm going to tell you what's up. He was at USP Coleman 2. What is USP Coleman 2? This is a prison where they send people that are former gang members. Don't get it twisted. There's gangsters at USP Coleman 2. Plenty. I've seen plenty of violence there. I've seen plenty of stabbings there. I've seen the paisas go at it with, the Central Americans. I've seen some wild, wild things over there. So Barbie pleads guilty when he gets arrested, right? And he ends up sentenced to 49 years. And I went back and I looked at the sentencing memos, looked at the sentencing transcripts, and the government didn't go hard. The government didn't outline, the murders and the killings and the violence too hard. They kind of stayed away from it. They just talked about, all the drugs that he sold, over 12,000 kilos and all the money. That's what they talked about. But anyway, this brother was at USP Coleman 2 for a reason. That's a place where you're pretty much safe. However, they have a lot of paisas there. And for those of you that don't know who paisas are, those are people that are like from the motherland, foreigners. And what happens is a lot of the Mexican dudes that aren't involved in gangs, they're paisas, they form their own little organization, their own car. And there's hundreds of them on a yard. So Coleman 2 was a place for pretty much for people to be safe. Things do happen there. It is dangerous there. But why do people disappear from the Bureau of Prisons, website telling you where these people are located? Where are they housed at? Sometimes the Federal Bureau of Prisons will take a person and they will house you in state prison for your safety. They will take you and send you off to a state prison. You might be in Wisconsin. You might be in New York. You might be in Illinois. You might be in Florida. You might be in Georgia. You might be in Alabama. Don't want to be there. But that's what they do. There's also been some things that have gone on, even though they're supposed to be closing all the private prisons, where they would take all these paisas, right? You might get arrested in New York, and they're going to send you all the way down to Louisiana and stick you in this private prison where they're sticking all the foreigners. And when they do that, usually you come off the Bureau of Prisons website. They'll stick you down there for that. They will also take you off there if they want to protect you, if they want to hide you. Is Barbie going back to court? Is Barbie, assisting? Who the hell would walk into federal court and say, you know what? I'm 44 years old. Go ahead and give me 49 years, man. Go ahead. I'm going to be in my 90s when I get out, right? Be in my 80s if I even make it that long. I just don't see people walking into federal court with an open plea, no plea agreement. He had no plea agreement with the government here, at least none that's on file, and he pleads guilty and gets sentenced to 49 years. Maybe he had some things going on. Maybe they took him out. Maybe he is working. Maybe he's not. Nobody really knows until it happens, right? All they know is that he's disappeared, but there's a number of scenarios. He didn't leave Coleman so that they could protect him. I can promise you that. Coleman is a place where he was probably protected. He may have very well been the shot caller for the paisas over there. I've been in prisons where, like I said, Armando. When we were in Lexington, every paisa there looked up to Armando. He was that dude. He was the man. So I would imagine that, the same thing with Barbie. I've been in other prisons where there were big shot cartel guys. The Felix Arellano brothers, the doctor. All the paisas looked up to him. He was protected. Nobody would hurt that dude. And he looked out. He looked out for his people. Sent money for commissary, 300 here, 300 there. It was nothing for him, right? But anyway, let's get into the cartel story. You want to know about the cartels? You want to know how this shit really works? You want to know if the stuff that you hear about is just made for TV? Or is this real life? Barbie was that dude. This is real life.
mi arma, lo guardan ahí. Este es una arma, es 20 balas. Bueno, no me gusta bien, pero por el grupo delictivo que quiere entrar, por eso decidí.
He was born and raised in Laredo, Texas, and was reported to be very popular in high school, where he received his infamous nickname from his football coach due to him resembling a Ken doll, with his blonde hair and blue eyes. The girls were all over him. LaBarbie was a normal kid, or was he? Edgar Valdez-Villareal was on a mission. He would become a drug trafficker of the highest magnitude, starting from humble roots in Laredo, Texas. He worked his way up to becoming a top-level enforcer and trafficker for the Sinaloa and later Beltran Leyva cartels. Known for his flashy lifestyle, Valdez earned millions of dollars by selling thousands upon thousands of kilograms of cocaine in the United States. As the amount of cocaine trafficked by Valdez was staggering, the brutality of his operations is disquieting. As Valdez, LaBarbie is credited for starting a war with the Zetas to wrestle control of the lucrative Laredo corridor to further his criminal enterprise, leaving untold carnage behind. LaBarbie's reign came to a crashing halt on August 30th, 2010, when he was arrested by Mexican police at a ranch he owned near Mexico City. LaBarbie was subsequently extradited to the U.S. He was a United States citizen after all, born and raised in Laredo, Texas. At age 18, he was arrested for criminally negligent homicide based on a traffic accident in which the driver of another vehicle died. He would not face charges. He would later be dismissed. 2 years later, at age 20, he was arrested again, this time for a petty crime of possession of marijuana. He was sentenced to 7 years imprisonment, but the court suspended the term of imprisonment and placed him on probation for a term of 5 years. A year and a half into his term of probation at age 22, he would again be arrested for driving at a high rate of speed while intoxicated. The charge was ultimately reduced from driving while intoxicated to public intoxication, and he would escape with a fine. 2.5 years later, at age 24, the feds had finally put a grip on him. He was charged in a federal indictment for possession with intent to distribute approximately 800 pounds of marijuana. He was never arrested on those charges. Instead, he would move to Mexico and began a sharp upward climb into the realm of cocaine trafficking. By 2000, at age 27, he was already a significant player in the cocaine market, operating out of Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, with customers in New Orleans and Memphis. And he was building his own drug trafficking organization with violence, fear, demanding respect. By 2001, at the young age of 28, he was sending shipments of 20 to 30 kilos of cocaine every 3 to 4 weeks into the U.S. That would increase to 60 to 80 bricks and ultimately 150 to 180 bricks per shipment. In September 2001, federal agents obtained a brief but illustrative window into LaBarbie's operation. The month before, he agreed to meet a new distributor for one of his markets in the U.S. The distributor traveled to Nuevo Laredo to meet Valdez at one of Valdez's residences. Valdez arrived in a caravan of 3 vehicles, including a Chevy Suburban and an extended cab pickup truck. His vehicle was equipped with police lights and sirens. Several armed men guarded the caravan of vehicles and the residence. The group then moved to a second residence, which was large, had gun ports throughout, and was also surrounded by heavily armed men, some of whom appeared to be Mexican law enforcement officers. During the meeting, Valdez stated that he had 80 kilograms of cocaine sitting in the residence and was expecting a shipment of 250 kilograms of cocaine and firearms the next day from his Colombian source of supply. Valdez warned the distributor not to cross him, threatening that he knew many people in high places and that he was paying the government a lot of money. To ensure he would be able to carry through with any enforcement action if the distributor crossed him, LaBarbie required the distributor to tell him where he lived. He also wanted to know where his family was at. That same year, LaBarbie staged a similar encounter with 2 potential customers from Memphis. When the customers crossed the border into Mexico, LaBarbie dispatched a local police department on his payroll to pick the customers up in police cars and to deliver them to LaBarbie. He was surrounded by security guards carrying AK-47s. Court papers say the scene was staged for appearance over substance, and that the AK-47s were actually not even loaded during this encounter. Valdez staged this encounter purposely to make an impression. He wanted people to fear him and know that he was in control and above the law. He wanted people to believe that in fact he controlled the law. This image, that of the enforcer, was carefully crafted and became his key to notoriety both in and out of the cartel world. One of those customers, Craig Petty's, alleged to be Big Meech's connect at one time. Craig Petty's ultimately became an important customer of La Barbie and his gateway into the Memphis market. He wanted to get into Tennessee. Receiving shipments every 3 to 4 weeks of 50 to 60 bricks packed in crates and delivered to Memphis by tractor trailers. Yeah, that was Craig. The crates would be emptied, then repacked with cash, approximately $1 million per trip, and transported back to Mexico. Years later, Petty's fled to Mexico, where La Barbie would give him refuge and allow him to continue operating his Memphis operation from abroad. Indeed, La Barbie was protective of this important customer and prevented other members of his drug trafficking organization from ever meeting him so that they couldn't steal him as a customer. Petty's was bringing in that paper, and La Barbie wanted all of it. However, Petty's was ultimately arrested in Mexico and extradited back to the United States, where he was sentenced to life imprisonment on federal charges that included murder, kidnapping, drug distribution, and money laundering. His case is coming soon on Blood on the Razor Wire. By 2002, Valdez had built up a successful trafficking organization in Nuevo Laredo, but he hadn't had enough. He wanted more. He had formed a partnership with his co-defendant at the time, Carlos Montemayor, who had an infrastructure of trucks and drivers for transportation of cocaine, obtained within Mexico to and across the United States border, with ultimate delivery to U.S. cities, including communities and neighborhoods near you. Together, Valdez and Montemayor developed a network to transport the organization's drugs across the border from Mexico into Laredo and to process and smuggle cash proceeds back into their motherland. La Barbie had also established control of one of the border crossing plazas leading into Laredo, enabling him to easily move shipments across the border. By partnering with the head of the plaza, Valdez continued to obtain his drugs from various sources in Mexico, although he was plotting. He wanted his own connect from Colombia, and he would dispatch a lieutenant there in order to develop direct sources. To the members of his organization, Valdez was known as La Barbie in reference to his fair complexion and appearance. Valdez's Nuevo Laredo operation was also lucrative. With cash La Barbie was not investing in additional purchases of the drugs. He used to fund construction of luxury residences, real estate, and other businesses. He also purchased 2 ranches in Nuevo Laredo, one of which consisted of 40 to 50 acres and had a mini zoo with rabbits, a lion, and other animals. Why not? He had plenty of bread. He had to spend it somewhere. However, La Barbie's success in the area was not unnoticed. In approximately 2002, the Gulf Cartel in Mexico dispatched its enforcement arm, the most dangerous, the Zetas, to obtain control over the drug trade in the Laredo corridor. But would they be successful? Violence in the area would increase, with many people being killed or disappearing. The Zetas took over control of a border crossing plaza on the other side of Nuevo Laredo from the one who controlled. That was Valdez, and eventually killed the man who operated Valdez's plaza. They burned multiple residences, Valdez's own, and killed the animals in his zoo. In the face of rising safety concerns, La Barbie and his subordinates evacuated Laredo and continued their operations in various locations in Mexico. They had lost. They would move to Monterrey, while he and his associates engaged in frequent violent incidents with the Gulf Cartel and Zetas for dominance of the Laredo corridor. When he moved the drug trafficking operation to Monterrey, Valdez obtained 4 houses, 1 for his family, 2 for the DTO, and a 4th to be used as a safe house in case the others were in jeopardy. Business in Monterrey, however, was not as lucrative and money was tighter. La Barbie formed a relationship with a former state police officer in Monterrey and gave him money to pay off the state and local police officers to prevent them from interfering with his DTO, drug trafficking organization. Valdez also used that connection to introduce him to Arturo Beltran Leyva. Beltran was a high-level cocaine trafficker based in Mexico City, and at that time, he and his 3 brothers were associated with Joaquin Guzman-Loera, a.k.a. El Chapo, Ismael Zambada Garcia, a.k.a. Mayo, and then emerging Sinaloa Cartel. Over an initial meeting in Mexico City, La Barbie and Beltran would hit it off. Afterwards, a confident Valdez told an associate to get a nicer apartment in Mexico City because La Barbie would be moving there. La Barbie had also learned that Beltran had a house with horse stables, but no horses, and formed a plan to integrate himself to Beltran. Together with Carlos Montemayor, Valdez bought 2 horses and had them delivered to Beltran. They also sent a horse trainer who stayed with Beltran for several days to teach Beltran about the horses. the plan would work. Beltran loved the gifts, and Valdez was invited to do business with him directly. After that, during the fall of 2002, Valdez moved the DTO operations from Monterrey to Mexico City. He had numerous meetings with Beltran in Mexico City, Acapulco, and at Beltran's ranch, and became known as a Beltran Leyva guy. Valdez also met with Guzman on multiple occasions. In early 2003, Valdez was sending shipments of 150 to 180 bricks to Memphis. Pettis waiting for them. Wanting to solidify a steady cocaine supply, he dispatched his associates to Colombia to meet with members of the Cali and Medellin cartels, as well as others in Bogota and Cartagena. Barbie's reputation had already spread throughout Colombia, where he was becoming well known for his war with the Zetas and widespread killings, earning him the nickname there, El Tigre. He was as ruthless as they come. This was the shit people thought only happens in movies. Barbie was really living that life. He was about that business. At the same time, Barbie was working to stabilize his ability to send drugs across the border through the Laredo corridor. Valdez solidified his relationship with Beltran, meeting with him on an almost daily basis, and used Beltran's support to set up a meeting with the Gulf Cartel Kingpin, Oswald Cardenas Gulian, whose people, including the Zetas, had taken over Nuevo Laredo and pushed Valdez out. Valdez brokered an agreement allowing him to continue to import cocaine through the Laredo corridor as long as he paid a tax to the Gulf Cartel to do so. The agreement, however, broke down shortly afterwards because Cardenas was arrested by cops. Beltran had advised Barbie to get out of Nuevo Laredo once again because of the instability. Nevertheless, Barbie vowed to push his rivals out of Nuevo Laredo. He used his relationship with Guzman to partner with one of Cardenas' former associates in the area. He also used his contacts to rally support against the Zetas, including from the leader of the Valencia Mariano cartel, Armando Valencia Cornelio, who hated the Zetas and was willing to provide money and manpower to fight them. In fact, I had worked on Armando Valencia's case while at Lexington. Eventually, Valdez convinced Beltran to support the fight too. Beltran called a meeting attended by himself, Valdez, Valencia, and the leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel, including Ismael Zambada Garcia, El Mayo, Ignacio Cornel Villarreal, a.k.a. Nancho, and El Azul. Beltran said that Valdez was going to war with the Zetas and asked for their support. This was when shit got real, really real. With the newfound backing, Barbie and his allies sent approximately 300 men to push the Zetas out of Nuevo Laredo and back into Reynosa. Valdez provided many of his men with government uniforms and bribed members of law enforcement to allow his men to be commingled with their forces. Valdez himself wore a uniform at times. Violence increased, with members of the Zetas being robbed or disappearing. Barbie made the final decisions in organizing the conflict with the Zetas. It is believed that he hired some of the violence out to the MS-13 and Mexican mafia. Cartel business was a dangerous and dirty game, and Barbie was all for it. During this time period, the Zetas used their contacts and influence with the local newspaper to make sure that Barbie was frequently on the cover of a local newspaper and blamed for all the killings. Continually aware of the power of the image and the media, Barbie bought off the local newspaper and wrestled control of it from the Zetas. The Zetas were losing, and in August 2003, this violent organization would now come on bended knees, asking for a meeting to discuss a truce. Valencia and others showed up, but were arrested by law enforcement. After that, a Mexican federal police commander and his wife were killed, and violence increased even more. Many of Valdez's men were forced out of Nuevo Laredo, but some of Valdez's allies remained and continued fighting. In late 2003 and early 2004, as Barbie and others continued to skirmish with the Zetas for control of the trafficking corridor, Valdez continued to expand his trafficking network and benefit from his close association with Beltran, taking over control of the port in Acapulco, Mexico. Valdez used the port to coordinate the importation of cocaine from Colombia and other Southern American countries, using speedboats and airplanes, including shipments of as much as 3,000 kilos at a time. He ran a network of drug houses in the area to process the shipments and paid bribes to local law enforcement officials to protect his operation. Drug Inc. at its best. He also cemented his relationship with Harold Mauricio Pavada Ortega, a.k.a. Conejo, who was Colombian and was able to arrange for Valdez to receive a steady supply of cocaine from Colombia. Barbie had an image to protect. He wanted to be feared in the underworld and respected outside of it as a legitimate businessman. He would continue to cultivate his image, having his DTO members wear suits and ties, but taking off the jackets and ties when they went to nightclubs in the evening. Like John Gotti, he was too flashy. Associates of Beltran, however, disapproved of Valdez's flashy persona and the fact that he was always in the news. Like John Gotti, he was too flashy for those that just wanted to get money, and lots of it. During this time, Valdez continued his partnership with Carlos Montemayor, who coordinated the DTO shipments of cocaine across the border into the U.S. from Nuevo Laredo. Valdez's DTO was sending an average of 600 to 700 kilos into the U.S. every 3 weeks, a rate that continued through 2007. The drugs were shipped across the border into Laredo, Texas, and then on to Memphis, Dallas, and San Diego. Valdez and Montemayor also branched out and added Atlanta to their U.S. distribution network. Initially, shipments to Atlanta carried approximately 30 keys, but they quickly escalated to shipments of more than 100 bricks at a time. As 2004 went on, Barbie and Montemayor sought out a more formalized distribution organization for their customers in Memphis and Atlanta. That's where the bread was coming from, and they wanted to make it work. Jesus Hector Flores, who was Montemayor's cousin and who had drug contacts in Memphis, agreed to coordinate the receipt and distribution of loads of cocaine delivered via tractor-trailer trucks. In the spring of 2005, because the Atlanta business had increased so significantly, at Montemayor's request, Flores opened a second U.S. base of operations for the organization in Atlanta. There was plenty of paper in the A, and they all wanted all of it. In both Memphis and Atlanta, Flores recruited workers to establish stash houses, and these individuals worked full-time in the operations of the distribution organization. The workers met the tractor-trailer trucks and offloaded shipments of between 100 to 300 keys, usually every week, but sometimes twice a week. The workers parceled the cocaine and conveyed it to customers and accepted bulk cash payments, which they processed and delivered to tractor-trailer trucks heading back to the Mexican border. Eventually, the currency was smuggled across the border and remitted to the organization's supervisors in Mexico. In Atlanta alone, the organization is alleged to have distributed 1,500 bricks in just 6 months. Everyone was getting paid, and ATL was the place to be for those in the light or wanting to be in the light. Music, clubs, businesses, it was all here, not far from the federal penitentiary that might someday house these men of ruthlessness. On my birthday, August 17, 2005, based on information from the wiretaps, agents coordinated a traffic stop of a tractor-trailer truck driving from Atlanta to Texas. Inside, they found the proceeds from the organization's sales that had been collected and packed by the Atlanta workers, destined for Mexico. That shipment, a single example of the type of transport that occurred approximately weekly, contained $2.5 million in cold cash. On November 15, 2005, agents raided a stash house in Atlanta. Inside, they would discover on that single day 120 bricks and $1.5 million in cash. Agents arrested 4 workers at the house and then arrested Flores in Laredo the following morning. Eventually, he too would be sentenced in federal court to a devastating term, 460 months or 38 years in the federal penitentiary. His life, the lavish one, all gone. Forever gone. This would be his new life, concrete and steel. Barbie was 32 years old, and at the top, nothing could stop him. After losing 120 kilos, $4 million in cash, and several of his workers in Atlanta, he was undeterred. He continued his operations in Mexico. He continued to ship an average of 600 bricks into the U.S. every 2 to 3 weeks. He also continued to cultivate his cartel image. He wanted to be flashy and started purchasing high-end clothes and suits. He continued to purchase property where he built new houses and horse stables. Knowing he was a target and loving life, he did not want to lose it. He had to play the cat and mouse game. He also spent a lot of money on security. He rented multiple houses under other people's names, and sometimes would not even let close associates know where he was staying due to security issues. He had several state and local law enforcement officials on the payroll to act as bodyguards and to intervene if he were ever stopped by local authorities. He had a security detail of 20 to 30 men who carried automatic weapons, many of whom had prior law enforcement experiences. His DTO received shipments of weapons, including AKs, ARs, M16s, night vision equipment, 50 cals, designed to be mounted on vehicles, body armor, and rocket-propelled grenades. He had a gunsmith who converted rifles from semi-automatics to fully automatic. Although he was dangerous, he wanted to be protected. Barbie also cultivated his reputation as a ruthless enforcer. when his security team captured a member of the Zetas who had been sent to Acapulco to assassinate La Barbie, the security team made a videotape of Valdez and others questioning him. The man was then executed with one to the head. Valdez and Montemayor had their associates make multiple copies of the recording and send them to media outlets in the US and Mexico, and even wanted it sent to United States law enforcement to let them know that they were playing no games, that they feared nobody, that they feared no law enforcement, that they feared no other cartels. They meant business. The video quickly went viral on the internet. Again, he had an image he was projecting and had to protect it at all costs. On January 21st, 2008, Alfredo Beltran Leyva was arrested in Mexico. Arturo Beltran Leyva and his brothers blamed Guzman and the Sinaloa Cartel for Alfredo's arrest and split from them. The Beltran Leyva brothers established their own operations known as the Beltran Leyva Cartel, with Arturo Beltran Leyva at the head. After the split, Valdez continued his close association with Arturo, as well as his partnership with Carlos Montemayor. La Barbie's organization continued to receive shipments of cocaine from Colombia. They were delivered by submarines, airplanes, speedboats, and arranged for the delivery of the cocaine to customers in the US. And you thought this shit only happened in movies. On December 16, 2009, his mentor and boss of bosses, Arturo Beltran Leyva, was killed during a firefight with a unit of the Mexican Navy. The boss would take his last breath and perhaps be casted in the dark abyss of hell. He would never see Christmas again. For now, he was gone, but there would be revenge. Drug gang hitmen shot dead the grieving mother, brother, sister, and aunt of an elite Mexican Marine, who died after taking part in a raid that killed the cartel boss. Gunmen burst into the family's home in Quintana Roo in the southern state of Tabasco, just before midnight, December 2009, firing assault rifles. For that family, Christmas never came. They broke the door down with a sledgehammer and sprayed them with bullets in the living room and bedrooms. Money, power, and respect, but also fear, is what turned the keys for these ruthless hitmen. With the boss now gone, President Felipe Calderón considered it a win, never realizing that this would fan fresh violence as rival cartels sought to take over territory from the drug lord's weakened cartel. But La Barbie knew he wanted the power, respect, and most of all the fear that came with being the boss. La Barbie had his chance, and now he would take it. He had put in far too much work not to be the boss. His ruthlessness was like none other. La Barbie would dispute the cartel's leadership in its territory. In 2010, one faction was led by Valdez and Geraldo Alvarez Vasquez, while the other was led by Arturo's brother, Hector Beltran Leyva, and his lieutenant Sergio Villarreal Barran. The battle would once again begin. After Arturo Beltran Leyva's death and Carlos Beltran Leyva's arrest, Hector Beltran Leyva became the leader of the Beltran Leyva cartel. Hector Beltran Leyva, however, did not trust La Barbie, and the two began to feud. Violence would skyrocket and reach depths that were uncontrollable. In August 2010, 4 decapitated bodies were found hanging from a bridge, along with a message warning anyone helping La Barbie of a similar fate. Both sides engaged in similarly gruesome tactics intended to ward off the other. Over 150 bodies would drop and are allegedly linked to the dispute. This has to stop. But how? The president wanted La Barbie stopped. The full court press was on. Finally, at age 37, La Barbie was arrested by Mexican federal police on August 30th, 2010, at a ranch he owned near Mexico City. He languished in Mexican prisons for over 5 years. On September 30th, 2015, he was extradited to the U.S. At the age of 44, he would hang his head low in front of a federal judge and expeditiously entered a non-negotiated guilty plea to all counts on January 6th, 2016. But was this really a non-negotiated plea? Soon after, he walked back into the same courtroom at age 44, a broken man facing the rest of his life behind the cold concrete and steel, knowing that his face was sealed. The judge would look at the pre-sentence report prepared by probation that attributed 12,000 kilos to him. There are enhancements for possession of weapons, the use of violence, bribery of a law enforcement official, maintaining premises for the purpose of distributing a controlled substance, importing a controlled substance as part of a pattern of criminal conduct engaged in as a livelihood, being the leader of a criminal activity that involved 5 or more participants, and the use of body armor during a drug trafficking crime. When it was all said and done, he would be sentenced to 49 years in the federal penitentiary, and in the end, he was the loser. The man who began the deadly turf war between the Sinaloa Cartel and Gulf Zeta alliance that rained untold violence and misery on the people of Mexico would be banished to a concrete bunker for what could be the rest of his natural life.
Or is that what his fate would be?
So where is he? Is he on the street? Probably not. Could you imagine being 44 years old, you walk into federal court, and you say, you know what, there's no written plea agreement, judge, I'm just going to throw myself on the mercy of the court, even though my lawyers pretty much said my guidelines are life, and walk in there and take a 49-year sentence? Probably not. That's probably not what happened. Did they move him out of USP Coleman 2 to send him somewhere to keep him protected? Probably not. Coleman 2 is pretty much, things happen over there, but it's a place where him and his people flourish. It's a place where he was probably the shot caller. It's a place where you're safe. I know a lot of people are protected over there. Whitey Bulger was there. Steve Caracappa, the mafia cop, we got a story coming on that. He was there. I mean, this is a place where they send, former gang members, and don't get it twisted, there's gangsters over there. Lots of them. But pretty much dudes are like, man, I can't really go nowhere else, so I'm going to lay back and chill. I'm going to relax unless something serious happens. He was probably the shot caller. He was probably doing good. And don't think, well, damn, man, he's been in jail all these years. Yeah, but remember, he just copped out, in 16? He also filed a 2255. And he probably started thinking, damn, man, the government's playing games with me. Do you know what a 2255 is? It's a post-conviction motion. He tried to file a post-conviction motion to get out of prison. Maybe he felt like, hey, the government's not upholding their end of the deal, so I'm about to go ahead and file this stuff. The Rayful Edmonds story, 15, 20 years later, man, they brought that man back, reduced his sentence, and now he's getting out. So where is Barbie? He's probably in a place where he's safe, and he's probably back at court. He's probably at the Department of Justice. That's probably where he's at. But the moral of the story is this. That man had all kinds of stuff. That man had a zoo. He had so much money he could swim in it. He could eat it. But at the end of the day, he was 44 years old, man. And took 49 years. And he had already been in prison. He was in his 30s. How old was he when he was arrested? 39? So at 39, we're going to go ahead and give you a 50 piece. 50, you're 39. That's 89 with good time. You'll be about 79 when you get out. That man wasn't copping out and getting out at 79. You might as well just go ahead and ride it out. Go ahead and get life. But the moral of the story is that what you really want to be involved in? What are you worth? I don't have to answer that. You do. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, we're out.